what are your thoughts, your general thoughts on artificial intelligence? How do you think they pose a potential threat or benefit to the future of humanity?
Well, I think artificial intelligence poses a number of threats fundamentally. And I see artificial intelligence in the same way that I see mechanization. So, when the world went through the Industrial Revolution, jobs were provided in sort of mining, fabrication, construction, and white men went to work and they had jobs that they were proud of doing. They created things. So people went and they made cars, they worked in the steel industry, they worked, they went to the mines, and men took real pride in what they did. And then we moved to a world of mechanization, and mechanization took away a lot of jobs. Mechanization ended up stripping a lot of men of their worth and massively increasing unemployment. And if you now go around to areas where there used to be industry and there used to be extraction, South Yorkshire is a great example. You see places that were once tight knit communities where people were moral, decent, upstanding people who lived, good lives, and their families were good families. Mum, dad, kids,
Mm,
and the kids listened to the elders. And when mechanization took place, many people lost their jobs. The car industry went from being a massive, a mass a mass employer. The steel industry employed, thousands upon thousands of people, and so did the mining industries. And we lost all of those, and it led to huge unemployment. And that unemployment had a knock-on effect. It destroyed families, it destroyed communities, and it created it we went from having these estates, which were communities, proud people, to being sink estates and shattered communities. And we were told that this would be a temporary thing, and that the jobs would be replaced by service industry jobs and sort of white collar professional jobs. So the blue collar jobs were lost because of mechanization, but everyone was going to be retrained and work in the service industries and take on white collar positions, because that was what a first world nation was transcending to. The only places where people would be, mining or doing things with their hands, because of mechanization, was sort of in the developing world or the third world. So we were going to transition to this better world. And I think AI is going to do to the white collar worker what mechanization did to the blue collar workers.
hmm
So as we saw mechanization take away jobs and say, the car industry, we will see AI destroy jobs of web designers, architects, accountants, people who spend all day doing data inputting and working things out,
Yeah.
artists, graphic designers. I mean, I remember when, you wanted a piece of artwork, you would go to somebody on Fiverr, sort of a lady in Russia or a young guy in India, and say, look, here's $35 or $50. Can you do me this caricature? Can you do me this piece of artwork? Can you draw me this vector? And they would spend maybe 10 hours working on a piece for you, and you would give them $35-50, and they'd be over the moon, and you'd be over the moon. You'd be like, I got that for next to nothing. And they'd be like, well, in my country that's not next to nothing, I'm getting paid really well. But now what you're going to do is go to an AI site, or a site with an advanced piece of artificial intelligence, and you're going to pay them $15 a month, and it'll spew out infinite pieces of artwork for you, and people lose
Yeah.
their jobs.
I think.
And I think you're
Yeah. No.
I think
I
it's
I
going to
agree.
get.
It's
That's
but
the
but
first. That's the first bit of the bad. There's more bad to come. I'm not
okay.
finished with the bad. I also think that AI has the potential to replace. You see, human beings are creative creatures. We express ourselves through our creativity, and that has always been part of the European spirit. We talked about this earlier, the European spirit, our
Yeah.
creative nature. And I think that as Europeans, we stand above many other people because of our creativity, because of the art we produce, the poetry, the literature. Um, you know, And if you basically take that away from us and a computer program starts producing what we can produce, but better and in a fraction of a second, I think it really does strip us of quite a lot of the meaning of
Yeah.
life in a way.
I
Of our, well, not meaning of life, but the way we express ourselves as as an ethnic group. The way we express ourselves as an ethnic group will be taken away from us, and that spark of creativity, which is very unique to Europeans in the way we do express ourselves, will basically be taken away and replaced by computer programs.
mm,
And I think not only are we going to see a loss of jobs, but we will see a loss of purpose, a loss of drive, and I think it's going to be something that will be used to basically get us all sat in our pods on universal basic income, without employment, without reason for being, and we will just consume. Everything will be done for us. Everything will be reduced by machines. Every piece of artwork. I mean, you've already seen it in Hollywood. One of the reasons the script writers were up in arms is because scripts were being written and finished by AI.
yeah.
And you will see that, but you're going to see that with films. I mean, think of it like this. If you think of like the Avengers, at one point you would have teams of hundreds of people who would sit down at computer terminals, very powerful computer terminals, and produce cutting edge graphics, cutting edge CGI. But AI, you might well be able to put a film like Avengers Endgame into an artificial intelligence program and simply tell it to improve the film, and it comes out with better CGI, better graphics,
Yeah.
a better picture, takes out continuity errors, if there's little bloopers, it edits them out, and it figures all this out and does it in a matter of maybe minutes. So you've got like maybe a 3-hour film, and in a couple of minutes, an AI program has improved it and made it sort of immeasurably better to the point of being perfect in a way that a human being couldn't make it perfect. And then you've got the scary thing of it's not just art, literature, and poetry, but then it's acting. It's being human. And another thing, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've made a number of videos about OnlyFans and the way OnlyFans has had a seriously negative impact on both young men and young women. But I don't know if you've seen this. There are now AI females that men pay to have as girlfriends, and these AI programs text them, send them flirty messages, ask them if they're okay, and they can read the response of the messages and reply accordingly. And if the man's feeling flirtatious, he might get a sexy message back with his AI girlfriend in the outfit that the AI thinks he would like. And I think what this is going to do is not bring us a golden wonderland. It's not going to bring us a brave new world that we all love. It's going to make us more atomized, more isolated, take away the things that make us human, and ultimately lead to a very dark place. And what I've outlined there is probably one of the better case scenarios, because the worst case scenario is that AI achieves some kind of sentience and decides that we as humans are the greatest threat to all other species of plant and animal life on this planet, and thinks that we need to be cold. And you've got a Terminator style situation. And to be honest, one thing that always, before you say anything, I'll just say this. My final point is, one thing that always stood out to me in the film The Matrix was when Agent Smith said he'd figured out that humans weren't actually mammals, that we were actually bacteria, and all that we do as people is multiply rapidly like bacteria and destroy everything else in our environment. And I always thought that was an interesting observation. But what if an AI did come to that conclusion? Said, look, well, you're destroying the rainforest, you've wiped out all these other species, you're not only a threat to yourself, but you're a threat to every other living organism on the planet, and you've got these weapons of mass destruction, these nuclear bombs, these hydrogen bombs. It's time for you guys to go. There's a lot to unpack in everything I've just said, but I think overall AI does pose a number of threats, at best to the cohesiveness of our society, and at
Hmm.
worst to the human race as a whole.
Do you not think that if it was controlled in some way, because as it stands, AI to me doesn't seem so sentient. It's not sentient. It's actually quite stupid. It's just like an extremely advanced calculator based on input and output, and it always needs the conscious intelligence to guide it. Do you think that it could be an extension of our creativity and our intelligence, and we essentially become composers, which will enable us to build faster, better, and more intricate by just being an extension of ourselves, of our creativity and intelligence, as opposed to stifling it? Is that something that's possible, or do you think it's just teaching on being too dangerous?
Well, look, I want to address something you said. You said it was like AI wasn't particularly advanced. But I'm going to say this to you. Back in 1995, I bought, it might have been 1996, but it came out in 1995. I bought Doom for the Super Nintendo, okay? And Doom for the Super Nintendo was cutting edge, home entertainment. It was Doom on a home games console on your TV in your living room. And walking around in first person was cutting edge. It was cutting edge. Now you look back on it now, and it was low resolution. It was choppy frame rate. I still love it because of nostalgia, and I still actually like the SNES version best because it's the one I was brought up on. But by modern standards, it's a joke. But the point I'm getting to is less than 30 years later, we've gone from Doom on the Super Nintendo to Warzone 2, which on the best PC you can buy is almost photorealistic, 150 players on a gigantic map, and it's just the jump in technology has been so great in less than 30 years. What will the next jump in technology be? And you may say AI is stupid at the moment, but where is AI going to be
True.
in that same 3-decade leap? That's the first thing. And the second thing, what you're saying, could it be used for positives? Well, everything can be used for a positive if you use it as a tool. Okay? A tool can always be used to create, and it can often be used to destroy. But we're not talking about a tool here. We're talking about something. We're talking about a tool that actually takes creation into its own hands. So if I gave a sculptor a better quality chisel, he would thank me and he would say to me, well, this is great, Mark, because now my sculptures will be a finer quality. You've increased my potential by, giving me better tools. But what would happen if I gave a sculptor a chisel that flew out of his hand, did the sculpture for him, but far better than he could ever do it himself? Well, at that point, that's not a tool. You've actually replaced the sculptor. The sculptor is now being replaced by a super advanced tool, which makes him obsolete. And what I'm saying is, you yourself are a graphic artist, and I remember something I used to like watching on YouTube was people who used computers to paint. And when people first got programs like, Coral Photo Paint or, Photoshop, and they painted these gigantic pictures on their computer, I used to love watching stop motion videos of those. So they were sped up, so you would see them do a 50-hour painting, in 15 minutes, and it was brilliant. And that was a tool. But what we're talking about here is a tool so advanced that the creator is no longer needed, and it takes creation out of our hands and replaces us in that process. And I think, I think that's very dangerous. I think it's dangerous. And I said what the meaning of life is, but I think creation gives people purpose and it gives people fulfillment. So, for example, I watch my daughter build things using Lego, and I also watch her we've got a craft box at home, and she goes to the craft box and she'll get some felt and her scissors and some pipe cleaners and some sellotape and some glue, and she'll spend 30 minutes sometimes beavering around and say, Daddy, look what I've made. And I'll say, what's that, Sophia? And she'll be like, well, that's the grass, and that's the little house, and and I'll be like, what's the blue thing? She's that, Daddy, that's the pond. And she's created that, and she takes great pride in her creation. Now imagine, if the craft box just came to life and, built a absolutely perfect scale model village, with a water wheel and you know all, a road system and smoke coming out the chimneys of the little houses. It would be incredible, but it wouldn't be special because it wasn't created by my daughter. It's special
Mm.
because it's the creation of my daughter. And I think that's the thing. We are taking part of what is, intrinsically linked to our spirit and putting it in the hands of sort of a computer. And I don't. I think this has got. I think this is going to take away more than it gives. And in the short term, people will clamour for this because they'll say it'll make my life easier. But when it replaces them and their job, it won't be quite as good. And people say, oh, yeah, but you'll always need humans to oversee it. Well, yeah, you always need people in the factory, to fix the machines when they stop working. But that doesn't mean the factory is full of those people. The factory's maybe at 1% capacity of what it was. It's all the machines with a manager, somebody sat behind a computer desk and two engineers sat on standby. But there's not the hundreds or thousands of people there anymore. And I think we're
No.
just replacing everything that we do. And I think it's going to lead us down a dark road. And ultimately, when people lose that purpose that they derive from creating things and doing things, most people will unfortunately turn to darkness. They'll turn to
Mm.
drink, they'll turn to drugs, they'll turn to smoking, they'll turn to
Yeah.
obesity or gambling, and they'll live darker existences for that. I think creation or that creative spark that we have brings light not only to the world around us, but it brings an inner light out in us that is wonderful. It's part of our nature, and I think AI is a threat to all that.